everyone, welcome to another episode of Entitled. We are so excited you guys have joined us today. It's been a long time, you guys. It's been months and months. We have been in this weird state of a global pandemic, and if you guys follow us on Instagram, if you don't, go do that. You noticed a few days ago I had posted that we had stopped producing new content. There was a lot of things technically that we weren't prepared for, and just some things organization that we weren't set up for, and so we are ecstatic to be back. So, in normal Untitled fashion, we are coming back with a heavy hitter series, and I'm excited and I'm scared out of my mind to actually dive into this, but I have an amazing group of people I want to introduce you guys to today, and y'all are going to love them as much as I do, and they are going to just carry this topic so well, so I'm excited. So I'll start here and let Nina introduce herself. We're sharing a mic today, so have at it, girl.
Hi, I'm Nina. My husband will introduce himself in a minute. We're recently transplanted here from Michigan, and I'm super, super excited to be a part of this. I have followed Untitled. I love what you do, and I'm excited to just be in on the conversation.
Cool. All right, Jeremy?
Hi, my name's Jeremy. Husband to Nina, father to 3 awesome kids. And for my career, I'm in project management, an executive within our company. And it's just a great opportunity to sit down and be a part of this conversation.
Cool. Cliff?
Hi, I'm Cliff, father of 5, husband of Stephanie for 28 years. For profession, I have my own company where we sell surplus equipment around the world.
Cool. Awesome. So we're going to jump into this in per normal Untitled fashion. It's going to be super conversational, but today we're actually going to talk about racial reconciliation. But we can't talk about racial reconciliation until we talk about racial injustice. So these people, I've had either these conversations very fluidly, and I will say this, over this time, I mean, this is an intense topic, one. It's uncomfortable for many, and it's not easy. It's hard. And Untitled does hard things. So this is very suiting for us. So I'm going to kind of lean back and we're just going to conversate a little bit. But I think the one thing that I want to start off with first, guys, is when all of this happened, I think we all approached conversations, right? We all started talking amongst ourselves. And I know for me, one as a person of color, but also just as someone who I think I personally embrace a lot of different ethnic backgrounds and people. And my friend group is colorful. We'll keep it at that, right? It's colorful. It's diverse. My family is diverse, from literally Asians. I have a cousin that's half Filipino. My aunt's half Japanese. I have black cousins and I have Mexican cousins, and I'm half white. So I have a lot of white cousins too. So, I mean, there's just nothing that was really off limits to me growing up. And so one of the things I had a hard time with when all this stuff happened is, one, I was super heartbroken, right? Because innocent lives are being taken, and anytime that happens, it's just simply not okay. As a female, as a human, I feel that, but as a Christian, it literally it breaks me, tears me to pieces. But also, I wasn't super surprised. This wasn't something that I had. This is not the first time any of us have ever seen this, right? And so, my question to you is, how has these moments either defined, redefined, impacted you guys as men, as family men, as Christians? What does that look like in your life today?
I think for me, there was a bevy of emotions, a bevy of mindsets, and there were pivotal points where it was anger, outrage, becoming jaded, because like you say, it's been going on. It's just probably one of the few times it's been videotaped in such a, I guess, abhorrent manner. My family had discussions where they were like, wow, what was this? Disbelief, even though we do know it happens, it was so brazen. So many of the things have been so brazen. It's like, wow, this is where we are right now. It just gave me some numbness. My wife, even now, she doesn't even watch these kind of, those kind of things. Hey, did you see X, Y, Z? It's kind of like draining. Okay, what now? Yeah. What next?
Yeah.
And no matter the basis behind it, just once we actually see it, it just kind of man, again,
Yeah.
again. If we would think of like it was back to back to back to back to back. It's like when will it stop? But it's never stopped. It's something that, when we talk about racial reconciliation and racial injustice, the hard part about racial injustice is that we have to look at ourselves, right? We have, and it's the hardest thing. I've been involved with people that are in a criminal addictive cycle, transitioning from prison pipeline back into society, and the hardest thing that people do, have to do is look at themselves and say, where did I go wrong? Am I really the sum total of all these things I've done? And with racial injustice, we have to look at ourselves and say, not just white people, not just Hispanic people, not just black people, but we have to look at ourselves and say, man, where do I have prejudice, and how does that lead to racism?
That's good.
Right? And so, prejudice, they say, well, black people can't be prejudiced. I beg to differ, because they say, was it prejudice plus power equals racism? And then my question to that is, okay, we had a black president 4 years ago. He had ultimate power. And if he had prejudice, he could have been racist. I'm not saying he was, but I'm saying so that kind of blows the equation out of the thing that you have to be white to be racist, or you have to be in control of a system. Well, we had a black president, so he could have been racist if that's the purest form of the definition of racism.
Right.
So
That's good.
Yeah, even for me, as far as I think we all went through the same emotions. As far as, once again, like, I can't believe this is happening again. I cannot believe that. For me, it was definitely, I can't believe what I saw.
Right.
Knowing the fact that it's happened over and over and over again, but for technology, and like Cliff said, just happened to be recorded. So to be able to see it, and of course, my heart was breaking, and we sit down and we talk to our kids about it, exactly what all happened, because we're not going to just try and sweep under the rug. But we talked about it, and we were real with them. But I needed some clarity for myself. I think, like exactly said right, so we start within ourselves. And I went and I spent some time by myself. I went out on the lake, and I went out there first heartbroken. And I went out there thinking about it. I was sad, I was heartbroken. But I came back furious. I came back upset. I came back mad, came back almost wanting to fight. And it wasn't necessarily just the people that's causing the issues. I was more upset with my parents. I was more upset with my grandparents and my great-grandparents, looking at it as, my favorite word is erroneous transfer. Looking at it as far as this problem, it has persisted for over 400 years, and it's been passed down from generation to generation. And so I feel like I inherited a problem that, one, I don't feel the same way. I don't, as far as what has happened. And so for me, it's like, okay, is it going to be our generation that is going to fall in line with the previous generations and hand this same problem to our kids? Or are we going to stop for a second and say, you know what, I refuse to transfer this problem onto my kids and my grandkids? And so I think that's for me, as far as I had a very, just a somber moment where I was really frustrated, especially with my own family and grandparents and just the older, even though I respect the older generations, but I feel like this should have been dealt with a long time ago.
Right.
Long time ago.
No, I completely agree. And I think, there's part of me that some of that was so relevant and so inherited, like you said, for generations. Like, I know on certain parts of my family, like there's, prejudice like instilled in our family, and not from a, it was just what they did. Like it was what the family was, right? And that's sad to say, but to your point, it's like, man, if we were just to have a progressive mindset of thinking of like, this isn't right, then, now, and in the future, would we be living in a different world? And I think about that often, and I was joking with you guys earlier. Well, I wasn't joking, I was being serious, but jokingly earlier I said, like, I didn't grow up that way, and so for me, although I wasn't surprised, I was still heartbroken. It was hard to see visually, because right now, like, a lot of these things are being recorded as they happen, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, but it's, to me, I think it was a lot of, I'm an Enneagram 3, so I'm always trying to look for a solution. Like, okay, you know what? Enough's enough. Like, this is a bunch of baloney, not the kind you eat, like just a little bit of baloney, right? And I'm like, what are we as a generation, but not just as a generation, what are we as Christians, as kingdom people going to do to change this? Like, is peaceful protesting the right thing? I don't know. Is rioting the right thing? I don't know. Like, do I think it's wrong? Yes, but like, what is it going to take for us to start living a different life? Like, I don't want my friends of any nationality, of any race, to ever feel like they can't be themselves, that they can't speak freely or openly, that they can't live a good life because of the type of world we live in. And I don't know, it's sad, but I do believe that these conversations have to be had, and they have to continue. And they are not easy, and they're tough, and we have to do a lot of self-reflection. I think you mentioned, like, I've noticed, like, I've always had, a very diverse, setting, both. Actually, when I moved to Austin, one of the first things I noticed is when I was in corporate America, I was one of 2 people of color out of 40 in my office. And I was like, what did I just do? I literally was like, I think Austin was the wrong choice. And that's not to say that, Austin's a bad place. Austin's great. But being from San Antonio, I was a part of a D&I board in corporate America, where I was working, where we had initiatives to go recruit from colleges that had diverse candidates. Like, we went to black colleges, we went to UTSA where they have a lot of Hispanic kids, and I was like, we can't go to College Station all the time. Right. That we can't just recruit from one pond. And so, to me, I almost think like I take pride in having different friends, because I think people that are different are cool. Like, I literally, like, that's kind of a motto of mine. Like, I think people that look different than me and that have different cultural backgrounds, like, I love trying different cultural foods. Maybe it's because I'm a foodie. I don't know what it is, but I embrace those things. I think it's awesome. But so that being said, so as parents, right, what did that look like in your household? So, like, Cliff, you guys said that you sat down with your kids. Like, how did that go with your kids? Like, what did that sound like? I mean, you do, too, because y'all talk to your kids as well, right?
So really, I can build on that, but also something that Jeremy said.
Yeah.
Because part of the relief, and I didn't get to the part of relief, it was almost like finally we have America's attention. There's finally a recognition that there is something wrong with systems, not just people, but systems. And if it was one of those things, if it hadn't been videotaped, what would have been the excuse?
Would it have had
the same impact, and it would have been a different narrative. But then also, I thought back when you said, our parents and things like that. But what did we see when we saw Rodney King? Right? I mean, it's almost as bad. He just didn't die.
Yeah.
Literally, I mean, whatever drug he was on or whatever, however it happened. But what we made excuses, and we had reasons why that happened, and then there was reasons why this happened. Sure. And so my question was, why? What's so different? Maybe our consciousness was something. It awoke a consciousness, and that was part of that cycle of kind of grief and anger, all these different things. But then also for a small period of time, there was a sense of relief, like, hey, the church is listening, society is listening. Now there's a solution coming. But it's almost like we're back into our own corners, and pointing fingers at each other of, it's conservatives, liberal, progressive. It became, the whole humanity of it was hijacked by political agendas.
Come on.
Right? And so within our family, we have those frank conversations of, left versus all those different things. But then also, we've had those, hey, just comply. I tell my son, just comply. Yeah. Then they ask, well, they were complying. He complied.
Right.
She complied.
Right.
And still what's the result? So should I comply?
Yeah.
And kind of still get done wrong? So we've had those conversations of the hands on steering wheel. Hey, turn your light on in your car. Don't move. Even me. I can't say I've had bad interactions with police officers. Sure. But that's not to say that a lot of my other friends haven't. I mean, there's all kind of stars and celebrities that come out with these stories now. They're legitimate stories of, hey man, I got really rustled up by the police officers until they found out who I was.
Wow.
You know, I mean, I've known in where I grew up, I knew police officers that would come and take people's drugs.
Wow.
You know, and then they rustle them up and come back later and come take the drugs again. And so I mean, it's not. There's not one thing we can tell our children not to do.
Right.
We can say comply, but if you got the wrong person and they come to you on an 8, they stop your car, they're on an 8, they've already had some bad interactions with people. Anything you say can set them off to go to 10, and that's why you see a lot of times, people getting snatched out of cars for what? It's like, what in the world? Why? Why? How did you go from 0 to 10 that fast? But really, they probably were at 7 or 8 because they've got lives, they've got families, they've got all these different things. So it's not. We have these conversations, but we don't have a solution.
We don't.
We don't.
Yeah, because and even to build off what you said, we've had even in the past we've had these small windows of opportunity that we just chose to ignore. As far as America, this isn't the first time that our country has been awoke. As far as even go back to the abolishment of slavery, going back to the right to vote. You go back to the desegregation, and Rodney King. There's been these opportunities for us to get it right. And it's almost like as a country, we just put our head back in the sand because it's much easier to ignore it than to address it and work on it. But I know my conversation and my wife, when we talk to our kids, I know it may be different than the conversation you had with your kids. But for us, it was more of, obviously trying to protect them, make sure, hey, hands on the steering wheel. If obviously our kids aren't driving yet, but, all that kind of stuff.
Cool if they were, though.
It would not be cool if they would. No, but
Can you imagine?
She's never getting her license. But for us though, it was more of for our kids, as far as you have a voice. When you, it's not just when you see something, say something, but do something.
Right.
And I think for us as Christians and as believers, I mean, our ultimate goal is when we leave this earth is to leave it in a better place in which we found it. And so for our kids, as far as you might be able to do something, say something that other people might not have that opportunity, and so to always and not just in a racial situation, but always be not just a better person, but be the person in a situation that one you can help and bring clarity, and so we cannot control. And this is something that kind of frustrates me because for every 10 parents that's teaching their kids the right thing, there's always 2 or 3 that's not. So that's why, as far as this problem, unfortunately, isn't going to be resolved with one march or one protest or one riot or whatever. It's going to be ongoing because, unfortunately, we do have parents that do not see the not just the value, but as far as there's just some people that want to see the world burn. Unfortunately. And so for us, as far as I can only control what's in my world. I can only control what happens in my house and with our kids. And hopefully my, the other parents that's not, that there's an awakening with them that realize that, I have a hand in this too.
Right.
And I need to, teach my kids.
Okay. So you hit on something, and I want to talk about this because Cliff, right before when we're preparing for the episode, we had talked about that situation when you guys golfing, right? And my question is, you're right. I live on this saying that you can only control what you can control. You can't control how other people react, what other people say, how other people do things. And I'm a big believer that you shouldn't stress or worry about things out of your control. Like, that's why we have God and faith, right? Like, the things that are not, and even the things that are in control, we should still have that faith. But how have y'all's conversations with your friends, people in your sphere of influence, how have those conversations changed? Because to me, I've been able to have great, healthy conversations. Some have not been wonderful. Some of them have been, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to grab it and I can't find it.
Contentious, maybe.
Yeah, they've been very just intense, like very, very opposite ends of the spectrum. And so, and and luckily, I like to think that I have a good enough circle of friends where even if we disagree, we still respect each other. But what have those conversations been like? Like, have you seen the way their kids have treated others? And are these the times where we get to say, hey, like, as a friend, I love you, but like, your kid can't be that way. Or like, hey, as a friend, you can't say that anymore because it's not right. It's not fair. It's not in love. And these should be the moments where we give ourselves permission as kingdom people to be like, hey, like, I have to stop you. Like, that's not cool.
I think one part is as I've transitioned in life and been more mature, I'm more of a
note on that maturity. This is a mature conversation.
Right.
This is not like sorry, I just had to throw that.
So what I kind of purposed, and this is part of my transition into having more mature, real relationships.
Yeah.
Was that if you're going to be around me, we're going to have real conversations.
Come on.
And if you're worth it to me, then I'm gonna call you on it. Mm-hmm. Right? If it's just casual in the grocery store, somebody says something flippant. It's I've got thick skin. I'm not easily offended. I'll let them make it unless it's something really just egregious. Mm-hmm. So what I purposed, and matter of fact, one of my friends, I said, listen, if we're going to be friends, we can't walk on eggshells. Yeah. Right? If we, don't be afraid to make the mistake of saying the wrong thing. Yeah. As long as we're trying to get somewhere with this conversation. Right. And so I purpose with everybody that's around me. We talk real. We talk real. I mean, I wouldn't expect us to come here and just kind of glance around an issue and things like that, because nothing ever. If our friendship is worth it, and I know that there's going to be a future in our friendship, we have real, legit conversations, and that's with some of my black friends, my white friends, my family members, right? I don't have to, in a sense, kind of just ignore my political views, or even because they're probably, a little bit of both, right? And sometimes it just kind of says, okay, well, they wouldn't understand where I'm coming from. But now it's more, hey, listen, we're not going to change this until I feel enough within me to say, hey, I'm not feeling it. Yeah. I'm not feeling where you're going with it. I deal with people in all spectrums. I've got some QAnon friends. I've got some AOC friends. I mean, and we have conversations. I legitimately. I had a friend that said that wasn't George Floyd. They got killed by the police. I mean, literally. And I got to look this guy in the face like you're my friend, but that's nonsense.
I think you're crazy.
Right. I think you're a little bit crazy. You're my friend, but that's crazy. Yeah. Right. So no longer will I allow nonsense in my sphere.
Yeah. Right. It's good. You want to ask me?
A little. So I think, I feel like, and I'm probably going to ask you a question that has to do with this, but I feel like I was raised in a home, in a culture that, I'd like to say, I'm not racist at all. I was raised in a home where I didn't see this or I didn't see that, except if we go deep down, there is something in all of us that says, there's something there. And so for me, and I'm going to ask this to Jeremy because I don't know your answer, but I feel like I want somebody who's a good enough friend to me that I can say, am I wrong if I ask you this? You know what I mean? Wow. And I want an honest answer because I'm almost afraid to say, I'm a white female. I can't say that, or does that make me racist? I'm afraid to. I'm almost walking on eggshells. So I appreciate that honesty. For you, do you feel like you can ask that? Do you feel the way I feel? Do you feel like you not with Pastor Cliff over here because y'all have a great relationship and I know that you're honest, but in general, do you feel that as a white man, with the whole white supremacy, do you feel that I can't say that because otherwise I'll be viewed this way?
Yeah, there's political correctness. Yeah. And it's not and it's not even just a racial thing. It even gets into genders and everything else, and especially in the corporate world, of course, we have to be very aware of our words, and because our words have power, and so and we are judged by what we say. So for me, as far as I definitely feel comfortable, even with someone that I may not be close with, asking them, certain questions, because how else am I gonna know? I've never walked a single foot in Cliff's life. I have know what it's like to be an African American male in this country, and to go through things because what he goes through is different than what I go through. So how in the world am I going to know, and how can I help, and in what areas can I be a benefit and help certain things or whatever if I don't know the struggle? Yeah. And so for me, it's more. It goes way beyond just asking, "Oh, is this okay?" Whatever. But it's more of, I think there's a difference too, as far as it's not awareness, because obviously, if you're not aware by now, either you've been, you're in a rock, or you're part of the problem.
Yeah. That too.
Yeah. So I mean, so for me, as far as it's not to get awareness. Are you what? There's like issues with racial stuff happening.
Yeah.
What? No, it's for me as far as, okay, what can I know that I didn't know, or how can I help? Yeah. So not only just for me, but so it's going to have an effect on how we raise our kids.
Yep. I want to turn that question on you though, Cliff. How do you, if your white friends ask you, how do I say this? As a black man, are you offended? Do you receive it well? Do you, what is that like? Because I want to talk about, we'll answer that and then I'll get to my next topic.
How do they say?
Yeah, so it's hey, do you want me to call you a black man or an African American man? Is that's what we're talking about, right? The political correctness, right? And to me, I'm you're my black brother. If you want me to call you African American, I will. But to me, it's I don't know. That's in your court.
And part of it is the terminology. I don't know who was in charge of administering terminology,
Me
right?
neither.
Right? But over the time, it was, and I'll give this quick story.
Yeah.
I had a pastor, right? He was from, maybe he grew up around white people.
Yeah.
And we would have these conversations, about race, because he went from one of probably the most segregated places, down, Lufkin, Viter, those kind of places, really. And I lived down there, and you want to talk about 1955, it's literally it's frozen right there, right? And so we would have these conversations because he was pastoring probably the most diverse community, definitely in Texas, Killeen, Texas. I mean, you got 35, 35, 35, 15, and the 15s are Asian Pacific people, and so it's very, very diverse. But we still had a 95% white church.
Wow.
And so we have these conversations, and I would say the only way we don't have a diverse church is it's got to be intentional, right?
Yeah. And
so we kind of it came to a head, and I told him about some instances where there were some of the older people that would say, they'd shake my hand and look and say, "Oh, it didn't rub off," I mean, literally, or just these little silly things that I would ignore, and I would tell him, "Listen, this is happening," and he said, "Well, and I said, "Somebody even called." I said, "I've been called colored more in this church than I've ever been called in the secular world, right?" And so he said, he looked at me with a straight face and said, "Well, what do you want to be called?" And I said, "Definitely not colored." I mean, we're 40 years past that, right? You know what I'm saying? The water fountain said colored. We're definitely not colored. Maybe, I don't know what I want to be called, but definitely not colored. But I had to give him grace to ask me that.
Sure.
Right? Because he was sincere. And it let me know that, man, this guy's probably been under a rock for a few years because he's only been around certain people. And that's the great thing about diversity, is that some things don't even have to be taught.
Yeah.
If we're around enough people
that's good
that are not like us, we just catch it.
Yeah.
Right? We just, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to ask me anything, because you're going to know me. You're going to know my habits, my quirkiness. You're going to be around enough different people that you'll know certain things aren't acceptable. Mm-hmm. There was just even a couple of weeks ago, there was a political candidate that railed against the other political candidate about canceling diversity classes for corporate America. And then the same guy came out and said something about black people. And I was like, "You mad because they counsel the class that you need?" I mean, you know what I'm saying? So we have, it's so crazy that we're still in this point. What should we say? But if we're around enough different people, we automatically become diverse because we're
Right.
around diverse ideas.
No, you're right, 100% on that. And there's that saying that you are the company you keep, right? You are your closest 5 people, and I do believe that. And I tell a story a lot. When I was on that D&I board for the company I was with in San Antonio, we're really big in just like researching, like, how do you turn corporate America, a primarily dominated white male, I was, out of 13 salespeople, I was the only female. And given I was in San Antonio, so there were Hispanic people there, but I was the only girl. Like, it was hard. The D&I group I was in corporate America, and there's this TED Talk that I, like, for my personal use, I rewatch it almost every year. And this is going to sound bad because I don't remember the girl's name, Melanie something or another. She's like this black COO of a company, and she's this, stand-up woman, right? And she talks about, the whole conversation's on diversity, but she talks about, there's a story that's in the TED Talk, and there's all these white men and scientists and businessmen not white men necessarily, but businessmen and scientists at this boardroom table, and they're trying to solve a problem. And a janitor walks in, and in the former life, the janitor was something along the lines of like a farmer or something of that effect. And he's overhearing their conversation. He was like, well, this is how you fix that problem. And essentially the story is supposed to, come to the sense of like, it doesn't matter if you're the most educated, if you're the, smartest, if you have the highest GPA, if you're white, black, whatever. It's like through your lived experiences, when you have a diverse group of people. Like, I was just talking to Pastor Jonathan about this the other day, and I was like, I don't care if an 11-year-old solves my problem. Just solve the problem, period. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, Indian, woman, male, kid, child, baby, or grandpa or grandma. Like, just solve the problem, right? Like, ageism is such a thing, like race is such a thing, gender equality, there's such a disparity there as well. And so, but if people were just to have the mind of, let's just all put our heads together and let's just all work towards the greater good, the bigger goal, like what kind of world would we live in? And so it kind of brings me to one of the topics I wanted to talk to you guys about is white supremacy. And this idea, it's not an idea, it's truth, it's factual, that it's embedded not just in our American culture, but our world, right? And how do we, well, one, I want to talk about white supremacy, and I want to talk about supremacy, period, because I don't think there is just white supremacy. I think there's supremacy by definition is the superior feeling that you have over somebody. And I'll tell you personally, like I've dated all kinds of cultures and of men in my past. And my college boyfriend, I was with him for 3 years. He was a black guy, and his mom did not like me because I was Mexican. And her conversations constantly were, "Has that Mexican girl trapped you yet?" And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I literally didn't know. And he would like take her off speakerphone and go to another room. And I'm like, what does that mean? She was like, well, okay, guys, I was living in a lot of sin then. Okay, so whatever, call it what you want. But like, she thought I was trying to get pregnant and keep him from whatever, this success. Like, at that point, I guess she didn't think that a lot of black men graduated from college, and he was, a semester away from graduating. And the fact that she thought she has this idea that Mexican women just trap good black men, and by keeping them pregnant, and to me, I was so offended because I was like, your mom doesn't know how ambitious I am and how many goals I have in life. And I was so, because that's the first time I've ever really been truly stereotyped, because growing up, I grew up in such diverse, schools that I wasn't really pointed in that, and his reasoning behind it was always, and he will never listen because we don't keep in contact, and his mom will never listen, so I can speak freely here. I hope they do. If not, whatever. But his reasoning always was like, well, my mom grew up in the age where people mistreated her, like white people, Mexican people mistreated her, so she has a chip on her shoulder, so that's how she feels this way. And I'm like, but when do we get the permission to tell even our parents that's not okay, So I don't believe there's just white supremacy. I think she was, in some ways rooted in black supremacy, and I wish obviously you can be respectful to your parents. How do you correct that in love? So let's talk about it.
I think at the core, when you said white supremacist means by my genetics, I'm better than somebody. So that means it's already a kingdom issue. It's a sin issue already. So at the surface, right, we would just attack that as, how God made everybody. We're all equal at the foot of the cross.
Yep.
So if we approach it from that perspective, but then from a societal standpoint, as a matter of fact, you've all heard of Brown versus Topeka Board of Education, right? The court ruling separate is not always equal. Well, on the surface, that sounds great, but when you look at the actual court case, that's not what the precedent was. The precedent, the backstory was there was a black family, or multiple black families in Topeka, Kansas, and they had to walk 7 blocks to their school, right, to the segregated school, when the school in their district was 4 blocks away. They were satisfied with their schools. They had good black teachers, good principals. They had no problem. They had a problem with the principal. The principle of why do we have to walk twice as long, right? And so they come up with this case. They sue the Board of Education, and so it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and it comes back. The ruling comes back 9-0 that separate but equals wrong, but not on the basis of it's just bad. It's bad policy. It was the fact that one of the statements was when black kids aren't allowed in the presence of white kids to learn, that their education and their progress is retarded.
Wow.
Google it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that sets the precedent for court cases, not just the ruling, but the language, and the standing that's in the ruling. It sets all the education policy, right? So now you get busing. Now you get kids, just to go. Yeah. This is part of white supremacy, to go and learn with white kids because my kids will learn better, or they're not good to learn with people of their own, color or own race. Yeah. And so that to me is the nature of white supremacy. Supremacy that, okay, because I'm in the presence of a white person, I'm going to be better. Right. Just by just osmosis, I'm going to be better because Tyner's smarter than me, and he's going to impart all this knowledge to me. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. And then, I'm just teasing, but that's, and so when we think about it, we got to look at it and say, what makes us think that somebody else is better than us just because of pigmentation? Right. That's the only difference. Yeah. Just because of pigmentation, what makes you better than me? And then also all supplicant, and then what ended up happening was when they integrated the schools, they integrated the children, but they didn't integrate the teachers. 60 to 70% of black teachers in the South, with any corporate merger, think about a corporate merger, the middle level managers are the first one that aren't getting, kept on. They lose their job. So the teachers, the black teachers and the black principals lost their jobs. Yeah. So now children are learning with people that don't really want them around them. Yeah. So how much are they going to pour into them? Right? And so that was, when I read that and listened to that, I was like, man, that's the core of white supremacy, that you don't need to be around anybody like you. Just come in our presence and you're going to be better off. Yeah. Right? And so it just struck me that that's the core. And so every educational policy since then has been built off of separate was not equal, but on the basis of that we need to be around white people to learn better or learn differently, or else if we're not, our educational progress is being retarded. Wow.
So I have a hard time to even comment on white supremacy, just for the fact that it's hard for me to comment on something that it just still seems unreal. There's nothing that about it that not only can I not relate to it. Yeah. As far as I remember as a kid, watching movies as a child, and there'll be scenes of white supremacy, and as a kid, I knew it was wrong. Without even being taught. Yeah. Just it hurt my heart. And even now I see things and hear things like my heart aches. And so for me to even comment, I can definitely say supremacy is not just America issue. I mean, when I travel in the South Pacific and Palau, and then even when we're in Mexico, learn about the Mayan culture and different things, knowing the fact that supremacy is definitely a sin issue. It's a heart issue because it's a global issue. So it doesn't just affect just, it doesn't know the boundaries of just our country. It does infiltrate, worldwide, global. But to go into more about white supremacy, for us, I mean, I can speak for our family, it's one of those things that even when I talk with Cohen, I want him to be the best. I want him to excel. I want him to succeed. And we had a conversation yesterday. It was a tough one, and it was us talking about as far as whose responsibility is it? Nothing in life is going to be handed to you. You're not better than anyone else. By osmosis, you have to put in the work. If you want to be a great football player, well, you got to go with me to the gym. If you want a great job, you got to study. And so we've been training him and all of our kids, but he's at the place now where, we don't put value, on someone's skin. We also know that we celebrate culture. I mean, we're not trying to raise colorblind children. I mean, to the point where, I don't see color, like, baloney. I mean, no, I mean, to the point, especially with my kids, I mean, they're going to know, okay, white, brown, black, whatever. I mean, they're going to see it. But just because you see it doesn't, a change or affect value. Sure. It's what you do see is opportunity to celebrate a culture. And so, I mean, for me, that's, not to speak for my wife, but that's something that we've really tried to do is celebrate the culture.
Can I ask? This is, you're proud to be of your Hispanic culture, right?
Yeah, very.
And I'm proud of my Black culture.
Yeah.
Why is it such a bad thing for white people to say I'm proud to be white?
I was actually going to ask that.
Really? Okay.
It was along the lines, but not exactly like that. I think I know the answer. I know why I'm not, because, and I don't know if this is okay to say, but I'm saying it because it's what we're doing. I never wanted to be white. I know that sounds crazy. Mm-hmm. I'm envious that you're prettier than I am. Yes, you are. I'm serious. And because of the culture that I was raised in, I remember all of the people I looked up to, all of them were beautiful, powerhouse Black ladies. And I didn't have in my circle, I had good examples. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to be Yolanda Adams. I did. And I wanted to be Whitney Houston. Like, I would mimic their voice, and because my mom did a great job of bridging that for me, but there was something as self-hatred inside almost. Mm. So, and I felt like I'm also almost 100% German. And so I don't want to be affiliated with that. I can't find pride in that. Mm. And our son is the same way, where he said no, because then he is associated with Hitler. Yeah. I mean, really. So you cut that out. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be this. Yeah. So I have a little bit of a backwards thing, but that's why I was going to ask that for whoever wants to answer it. Yeah.
Do you want, you can go ahead, or I would.
Yeah, no, I mean, to celebrate my whiteness, I mean, no, I mean, there's no, I mean, as far as, because my perception is, one is that I would be viewed a racist if I did by some standard. But I also know that, I'm not going to say guilty by association, but obviously if you look at, going back through history, just because of the fact that there wasn't much opportunity, sure. For folks of different races. And so obviously there's a lot of reasons why. And even now, I know we've been talking about Cohen a lot today, but even with him, as far as it's weird because I feel like I'm starting to parent him maybe in a sense that some a different race would with their children's point, where I'm trying to convey to him that it's okay. You know, it sounds weird to say, but it's okay to be white.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're not a bad person because you're white. You know, and you're not better than anyone else because you're white. You know, kind of a thing. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And I remember when all this stuff happened, I would tell people like we'd call like each other in the middle of the day, and it would be like, hey, you have 5 minutes, I want to talk to you about something. And then we'd end up talking like an hour about between politics, race, I don't know, drama, not gossip. We're not gossipers though, so don't worry. But I don't know if you remember me telling you this story, but I'll never forget. So I have again, very diverse friend group. And a few years ago, I had some friends come up here to Austin to visit, and it was 2 black guys, and one of the black guys' girlfriends, she was half black, half white. And we got on this topic of conversation of race, and they said, so I'm mixed. My dad's white. He has Native American, he has German blood, he has Irish, you know, and my mom is full 100% Mexican American. And they were like, what race do you like associate yourself to? And I was like, well, I'm mixed. So I embrace both races. Like, I was raised by my Mexican mama. I love Mexican food. I love Spanish music, even though I don't understand it. But like, I don't deny my white family. My uncle takes me shooting. He introduced me to fried pickles. Like, there's nothing wrong with embracing those things. And I don't really see it as a cult. Like, I don't see it as this tie to this, you know, white supremacy or this, you know, group of people that discriminate. And maybe some of my uncles do. Like, I don't have the best relationships on my dad's side of the family, but for me, like, they were telling me, like, I did pick one.
Wow.
Pick one. And I was like, no, I'm mixed. And my girlfriend who was half black, half white, she's like, well, I associate with the black community and not my white community. I was like, your mom was white. Like, what? And so for me, I almost felt like discriminated because I did embrace both. And to me, I was like, and I forgot maybe it was something like one of us had shared on Instagram, but they were like, you know, mixed people have it the worst right now. And I'm like, kind of not really, but I think it's okay to embrace both. And I think it's a super beautiful thing. Like, the Greek part of our family, my grandmother's parents were from Greece, and my grandmother cooked authentic Greek food until she couldn't cook anymore. We used to go to a Greek festival every year in San Antonio. And to me, I'm like, it's okay to embrace those cultures and that background without having this guilt of like, oh my gosh, people are going to get so mad because I'm acting white today with my white family. You know?
So do you think it was them picking a side would have been you picking, let's say, the Mexican experience versus the white experience, and so maybe that was going to be a line of delineation for them?
Maybe. It
right?
Could have been.
On how they were going to approach you.
Right.
Rather, I mean, and I'm not, I guess it would be stereotyping. There's certain things that are unique, and certain experiences may be unique to the Hispanic culture, and maybe even certain grievances that you might have. And they were saying, hey, pick a line of delineation so we can know how do we approach you and how do we deal with you. Like, say if I was mixed with black and white, right? And they said, well, what do you want? What do you want to be? If I say I'm black, then now I get, you know, all the, you know, the benefits of, you know, or the, I guess, the deferment when I get stopped by the police or things like that. I get kind of like this sympathy kind of treatment from the white guilt and that kind of stuff. Or do I get, if I choose my white side, what do I get as a result of that? Right. So maybe there's a line of delineation for them on how they're going to treat you in the future.
You know, I don't know really where it stemmed from. It came so kind of unexpectedly and suddenly, and then I was like, to me, the way it felt, like I was a minority. It was 3 black people that identify as black against someone who identifies as mixed, and I've always embraced this type of things. And to me, it was just like, I don't take any. I don't think being white or being black or being Mexican or being Asian or being Indian or any other race that I may have left out, I don't think there's anything wrong with being any of those if you embrace like the beauty in it, you know? So, but you brought up white guilt, so I want to talk about it.
Okay, sure. No, and I say it because it's fake to me. It's not based. I mean, I'm a black guy, and I don't want the white people around me to feel sorry for me because of some perceived experience that I may or may not had.
Sure.
Right? And I don't want to say I believe in the American dream, so to speak, but I did read a T-shirt that said, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams."
Wow.
Right? So maybe not the American dream, but what my grandfather, my great-grandmother, people that I knew wanted to be, I'm living it.
Yeah.
And so I don't ever use my race as a crutch or as something to say, man, it's hard for me to make it today because I'm a brother.
Right.
No, if I did that, then it would be that erroneous transfer to my children.
Right.
Which would perpetuate a cycle that, you're talking about 30, 40 years to get out of the system. Before you know it, we're in 2100.
Yeah.
And so I would do them an injustice if I felt bad for myself or expected something besides an opportunity because of my blackness. And so when I have people that are around me that kind of express this, white guilt, right? It's almost, whatever you think about George W. Bush, he said the worst kind of bigotry is a soft bigotry of low expectations, right? That's to me is the baseline, right, of bigotry, when you don't expect something of me because of the pigmentation of my skin. I mean, that's beyond. You can be the most racist person in the world, but that person that expects less of me just because they perceive me to be something because of my. That's white guilt is probably the worst type of soft bigotry that you could probably embrace, to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, for me, I have a very hard time apologizing for something that I didn't do. I mean, if you look at relationships in general, whether it's in marriages or friendships, the last thing that we want to do is apologize, for something that we're not guilty of.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we have some major issues. We do have racism, we have all that. But to apologize over 400 years of something that, I mean, I wasn't even here for that.
What?
I mean, I wasn't even here for it. I mean, I'm sorry for what has happened for your generations. I can say, I feel bad about that. But to walk around with my head down in shame, I mean, how can we raise our kids to not just be proud, but to be confident instead of walking around trying to give apologies all the time for something they didn't even do? I think that could also bleed into other parts of our life where we're going to be so quick to jump on the accountability of something that was never in our lane to begin with. As far as, I mean, the last thing I want is for kids to grow up and now they are taking the blame for something because it's just been ingrained in them to take the blame for something that was never their responsibility.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I brought that up because one thing I noticed is when all this started and you started seeing all these celebrities post on Instagram and it was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what I don't know. And it was all these, people, and then you started seeing companies react to it. And we talk about like the Aunt Jemima thing. And it's like, okay, so I don't even know like the whole story to be quite honest, but like, you do? Yeah. Okay, but let me ask you this. Did it change anything?
No, because the backstory is there's family. This was years ago. I found this out. Their family has been fighting for some kind of revenue from using, their grandmother, great grandmother for years. And for years, you're not getting anything. She signed it for $2. Signed away the rights for $2.
Wow.
Right, and so the right thing to do, if you're really sorry for all of that, pay them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really sorry for it, and the part of white, I'm not interrupting you, but the part of white guilt is this: it's always somebody else's responsibility to step up to the plate. There aren't too many white people that feel really bad for black people are going to say, "Hey, I was next in line for CEO, but here you go. You can take my spot."
Yeah.
Right? White guilt always shifts the responsibility
Wow.
to somebody else.
Yeah.
Or even like say, listen, think about how many news anchors
Sure.
on the evening news, and they vent about it's not fair, it's not equal. Black people need a chance. There's your seat.
Yeah.
Give it up. So it's fake to me.
Yeah. I just, I don't know. To me, I also, we were talking it earlier before we were recording about how many people were just reaching out to, their black friends and apologizing kind of for things that they never did. And for me, I was personally just really conflicted. I was like, do I need to apologize? Like, why? It is so, right, to Jeremy's point, is why? Like, why do I need to apologize? Like, have I mistreated someone? And so I did. I had a lot of healthy conversations with a lot of my black friends, and I was like, did I treat you bad? Like, what's up? Like, did I say something? Have I acted a certain way towards you? And one of my friends, I'll never forget, he was like, Allison, if people that are in your circle know your heart, they know that you're the furthest thing from racist and that you have nothing to apologize for. He's like, so don't feed into this white guilt that there's this, issue or this problem, but you have the opportunity and responsibility to correct people if they have done something, to have them reflect upon, who they are and how they act. And it's important for you to share that with people. And I don't feel this way because I treat people well and I love people well and I treat them equally. But if you don't, let me help you be better. And not without judgment, without anything. It's this matter of extension of love and grace. And it's if you've done something wrong, apologize, but let's change that way. Let's change the way that you were doing things and treating people. So,
Can I ask just a question? This will probably get us in a lot of trouble right here.
I like those questions.
So do you think, not on an individual level, right? Okay. Because you and I, we all know how we treat each other,
right,
how our views are and things like that. But as a system, do you think America owes black people something?
Yes.
This is what I was going to say. And this
we're there today.
Yes, this is for the people watching, because I know friends, and I'm thinking of certain friends in my mind, and they're like, I'm not apologizing because I did something wrong. I'm apologizing because you haven't had it fair. Because for all these years, but apologizing is great. Let's move past apologizing. Now what do? And I loved that you said that. Give up your seat. Give up your spot. Because I don't think that people are apologizing. Now, I examined myself. But it's not about me apologizing because I've done wrong. Right. It's America. It's us apologizing because we can look at it and say, that's obviously wrong. Let's correct it. But I'm with you 100% on that. And that's what I was going to ask. Yeah. So.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, because I definitely see where you're coming from, and I think that we can take a minute and somewhat celebrate how far we have come together as a country. I mean, we can take a moment. I think if we don't hit the pause button and look back, we'll never know how far we've come. But we can always look forward. Man, we got so far to go, but man, we've come a long way. In 4 years, we have come a long way. Yeah. But I think we've come more just in the last 10, 15 years, and we've had probably 400 years combined. But I think that the systems need to change. As far as I love the NFL's Rooney Rule, where every NFL team is required to interview, African American candidates. And I love that because obviously, how else are they going to get that opportunity? So I definitely see where you're coming from when it comes to, okay, yeah, we want to apologize and we do this kind of stuff. Okay, but give up your seat. Not so quick. So I think we do owe some change, and I think it needs to take what we're doing now even further. Yeah. You know what I mean? As far as cultivating, and I did see an awesome video where the coach or somebody everyone's on a football field and they say, okay, take 2 steps forward if you had 2 parents in the same house. Take 2 steps forward if you're whatever. And they look back and you can see how there's certain people that have been given a head start in life, versus others. And so we need to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
And real quick, say, oh yeah, let's do reparations and give and cash out checks. Well, I mean that does absolutely nothing to my grandkids.
Right.
You know what I mean? As far as we owe our kids and our grandkids, as far as a sense of sitting down and really figuring out how we can shorten the distances, and how can we, give those that are never going to get the head start. What programs can we get in place? What things can we do? And so to Cliff's point, I definitely feel like the America that I love, the country that I think that still, regardless of our flaws, we still live in the greatest country in the world. But what can we do as a nation to level that playing field? We definitely owe that. We got to have an even playing field.
So I never would I say everybody get a $5,000 check, right? I mean, it does no good because the system would still be the same, right? And so if the system's unfair, you're just kind of perpetuating something. I mean, there are some. So pure reparations, no, I would never espouse that. But I do think, like, there's a book called The Color of Law. And it goes through the systemic kind of racism within. So they say home ownership is the quickest way to create generational wealth in this country. So I buy a house, it appreciates. I buy another house, pass it down to my kids, so on and so forth, land and all those different things. So blacks were traditionally, not strategically, excluded from home ownership. I mean, there's all kind of studies where during the 1920s and 30s and 40s, some of the people that are kind of uphold as these admirable people for race relations and loving, minorities like FDR. They were some of the most racist people that try to literally not even subsidize housing developments, FHA loans. They found out black people were going to live in these neighborhoods and these communities. They say, no, we're not going to subsidize it for the building, so it doesn't get built. And so now black people are forced into living into single-family homes with 4 families. Yeah. So now it leads to squalor. It leads to, all these different kind of dilapidated conditions. And so the government strategically up until recently, even still now, I'm not, like I say, I'm not this person that says give handouts to everybody.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. But in order for us not to get back, because I don't think we'll ever change. Listen, we're still fighting the same. Civil rights movement was in the 60s, all the way up into the 60s, and we're still saying a lot's changed, but we're not there. Yeah. Because the laws changed and people's heart didn't change. So while we're waiting for somebody's heart to change, there should be something within the system that we could, implement to kind of make sure that regardless of what people's hearts are, to make sure that everybody has a fair chance. And I like using the word fair chance because that's so relative, right? But make it to where it doesn't overly oppress one group or multiple groups and benefit other groups.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully and honestly, I don't know where to begin on that, right? And I say that because, unless you're a policymaker, unless you have a hand in that field, how does that change? How do we start making those changes? Because obviously there's layers upon layers of things that have gotten us to that point. So how do you either undo them or how do you change them to be fair?
Right. So let's say something like on the issue of maybe police brutality. Me personally, I don't think police should be able to investigate police. Okay. Right? Or there was, I think, a study in Cook County, Illinois, a while back, that between the years of 2012 and 2016 or something, or maybe a little bit longer, they paid out over $700 million in claims of police brutality. So whether you're liberal, conservative, progressive, or whatever, the conservative can say, hey, that's just not a good use of tax dollars. Yeah. Right? Somebody that's progressive can say, hey, there's something wrong with the system. Right. So it's kind of like this thing we we have to stop going to our separate corners and saying, you're wrong, you're racist, you're a bad person. And let's kind of use that, casuism, where you kind of find things you have in common, all the way down to we don't have common ground.
Right.
And so if we present it like that, then I think that's where you can come up with some viable solutions. If police officers are guilty of brutality, then it comes out of their pension, the police union, or something like that. Those kind of things that are practical, that most people can say, maybe the police, most cities are self-insured. Most municipalities don't have these insurance policies. They're self-insured. Maybe the police union buys insurance. Now the private sector insurance industry says, hey, police officers should be qualified with this training, kind of like an OSHA thing.
Yeah.
And then it becomes something viable where you can actually change policy before you change people's hearts.
Sure. Or, I mean, a lot of, like, continuing education professions, like, hey, every 5 years you have to re-up. And I will say this, and this, I mean, call it what you want, borderline political. I don't think it's just, like, physical. I think it's mental. We're not talking about gun rights, but, like, that's one of the things I'm like, I think if you own a gun, you should have to, every few years, like, re-up. Like, I'm still stable enough to own a device that kills somebody. That's my personal solution for whoever goes into office next. If you want it, you can have it. But I do. I mean, think about it. Like, we drive vehicles and operate vehicles, and we don't have to take a driver's test, but it eventually expires to the point where if you're not responsible for continuing that and for having that right and responsibility, then you are going against the law, right?
Or I don't know, do I need this? Or even practicing medicine.
We don't, if we're not on the same page.
Yeah, no, as far as, I mean, when it comes to, like having to get a driver's license, keeps your car insured. I mean, driving isn't a right, it's a privilege. And then even with owning a gun, as far as it's a constitutional amendment. So we have to make sure that when we set systems up and we're trying to correct systems, that we don't overreach and cause more issues as far as taking away, trying to do, I know this isn't a gun debate, what I mean, but as far as, but to make sure that that we don't cross contaminate and cause other issues.
That's fair.
So when it comes to just information in general, as far as there's I know police officers. There's a couple of people in my life that I know that are officers, and I don't know. Maybe they see this, maybe they won't. But there are some people that have no business being a police officer.
Sure.
They don't have the mental makeup for it, And so I definitely think there should be some sort of a are you the right fit?
Right.
Are you the right person? And then there should be some sort of level of investment. There should be some a training and awareness within all that. But so the ideas that what Cliff just went off with is not just good ideas, but it shows it's possible. Right. That we can get people who are much smarter than us. Sit down in a room together and say, okay, what can we do to improve on what we already have? Yeah. And it's not gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
But at least it's something.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I agree with what we have to put things in place where we should make the investment if they're truly public servants, right? And they're needed, which they are, right? Then we should make the investment into them through, like I said, every 5 years, maybe not, but psychologically. Are you worn out? Do you need a sabbatical?
Yeah.
Right? Do you need 3 months off paid where you can just recoup, re-energize? Maybe you need to be at a desk for 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever. Right? So I think those kind of investments are worth it.
As far as myself, like I'm not for defunding the police. I'm not for that because that's a reaction, and it's a reaction. It's like, okay, we're gonna punish. So now we're kind of vilifying people that's supposed to be protecting us. And then what we're going to do when it's 1 o'clock in the morning, we call 911. You know what I mean? And so like even now in Portland, they were talking about there were people calling 911 that's like over 2-3 hours before they even get help. For it. So we just have to make sure that what we do come up with is not just a reaction, but it's something that we can. Defunding the police, you can't build off that.
Right.
That's a dead end. We have to make sure that when we do set up systems, that it's something that we can continue to move and progress and tweak as we go to as we learn more.
Yeah.
To improve it.
So when you talk about defunding the police, it's a bad message on its surface.
Yeah.
Because in marketing, anytime you have to explain what your message is not, the
Right.
minute that you utter it,
Talk about that. Yeah.
it's ridiculous. So I don't know who. If you say defund the police, to me, D means take away, fund, take away funding, right? And then you have to explain that we really don't mean what we just told you we mean.
Right.
Then it's already horrible messaging. The ones that actually need the police won't be able to get the police because those that have money will have their own private police force, right? So if you get in a nice neighborhood and everybody can chip in $120 a month and it's 3,000 houses, you can get a nice sized private police force in your neighborhood. You don't have to worry anything to worry about.
Yeah.
But those that are left affluent and don't have the resources, they'll be stuck out again, right? So like with drug laws, gun control, those defund the police, those that need it the most will be the ones that are going to be the most disenfranchised. Can you do something different? If somebody does call and says, hey, my mentally impaired son or daughter is off their meds, then maybe you do take a mental health professional with the police, because they're not. We call the police for too much.
So that leads us to our next topic. So I want to talk about Black Lives Matter, and I want to talk about the movement. I want to talk about what it should stand for. And so I did a little bit of research. So Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013 off of the Trayvon Martin case. And obviously, like, innocent lives were taken, unfairly. And what I think I have a hard time with this too, because it kind of goes, with the white guilt stuff, but I think it's one-sided oftentimes. And I think as both a Christian, it's hard for me to get behind a movement, not the idea of it, but the movement of it, because like God cares about all people who are, unjust and unfair and oppressed. And it's not just about when white cops take black innocent lives. That's not all that matters, period, right? So let's talk about it. Jeremy, you go first.
No, okay.
Cliff, you go first. I don't care. Someone go.
Well, first, I kind of like anytime there's a movement, I kind of like to deal with the ideology behind it.
Okay.
Not just the message. Right? Because, of course, Black Lives Matter. Right? And then we can even segment it to all Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And then we can go into all lives matter. Right? So blue lives matter. All lives matter. But looking at their website up until a few weeks ago, one of their core goals was the destruction of traditional nuclear family. So from a kingdom perspective, that's like a non-starter.
Right.
Right? The very thing that we believe that kind of perpetuates civilization and makes civilization kind of go, till the end is the nuclear family.
Yeah.
Right now, however that looks, it's taken on different forms in the past 50 years because of just dynamics.
Right.
But to say that we want to kind of get rid of that institution, then that's a non-starter for me as far as the organization.
Yeah.
Now, how it derived and the purpose of it was to bring attention to maybe police brutality, systemic racism.
Sure.
I can say Black Lives Matter,
Sure.
right? But it's got to has to be the 4-year-old kid that gets shot, from a drive-by.
Yeah.
That life has to matter. And so I'll probably get myself in some trouble with this one. If we live in a community and there is black-on-black crime, and I know the academia says, well, because every race that lives in proximity to each other has white-on-white crime, black-on-black, Asian-on-Asian crime. Mm-hmm. And so it's automatically going to be high because we live in proximity to each other.
Sure.
It's still not right.
Right.
Okay, so if we say that Black Lives Matter, we need to get just as upset when there's a 8-year-old kid killed in a drive-by from a stray bullet, and we need to march in that neighborhood where those people live. Yeah. The reason why we can march on a police station, is because it's on television and we understand that they're really not, predominantly they're not going to do anything, right? Yeah. I've seen some times where they're pointing fingers at police officers, spitting on police officers. I'm not for that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm for, and I'm not the back the blue guy either. I'm a pro-justice guy.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So if they're wrong, they're wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If whoever's pro-justice, that's probably the kingdom mindset, is that I have to be for what's right.
Right.
And I'm not going to automatically just give people with, that are in authority a pass because, what is total power totally corrupts or something like that. So I'd say Black Lives Matter. I can agree with it, but then it's got to matter in every instance. There was just an instance where we talked about off camera about an illegal immigrant in Texas that had multiple felonies. Even the week prior, police had been called to his home multiple times. He got out of jail. He was a felony with a gun charge. Got out of jail, or didn't even get charged, and then he ends up killing a black police officer that was trying to save the wife in a domestic. So does that Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything about it in the media. So it's got to matter. If it's going to matter, it's got to matter at all times, in all instances.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the consistency. The idea. I agree with Cliff. The idea of Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. I was kind of confused when everyone. I mean, now of course we live in a day and age where everybody gets offended over everything. Right. It's like, and people saying Black Lives Matter, and then you have a large group actually, that was offended. Like, oh no, all lives matter. Like you're missing the point of the statement. You're missing. It doesn't revolve around you. This case, it doesn't revolve around you. You're missing the point. But what's also missing is the consistency. Talking about as far as if Black Lives Matter, then all Black Lives matter. Right. And the same passion that was shown, over different cases needs to be shown over all cases. Yeah. And I mean, otherwise we're just cherry picking. And at that point in time, then now we can see that, okay, there are certain times where it is now politicized and it's weaponized. Yeah. And it's basically being pushed, to push an agenda. Yeah. And so for me, I'm not behind, I don't want to get behind something that is just agenda purpose or, to be used for political reasons. But for me, as far as I just want to see things change. Right. I want to see the world to be in a better place. And if it means for us to talk about, yes, we need to talk about Black Lives Matter. Of course we have to. We must. But we also have to, make sure that we're consistent, consistent in that statement.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that was my biggest thing, is I was just like, I was never the one to be like all lives matter, but I did believe all Black lives matter. And I do believe that innocent lives matter. I think anything taken unjustly or unfairly, especially life in its form, is not okay. It's not cool. It's not fair. It's unjust. And so for me, it's been that topic's been a hard one to talk about. It's not easy because I do think that although the right, kind of what you said, right? The phrasing's there, but the message isn't. And if you have to explain your message of, hey, this is what we stand for, and you said, I think they weaponized the opportunity for that movement, and they politicized it. They did a lot of things with it, and to me, it did an injustice to Black people for what they did to it, versus what it should really stand for.
You could even take it one step further within the Black Lives Matter protest and movement, how it was politicized and hijacked by opportunists. And if you would even go back into the 60s, where the civil rights movement was hijacked by one side, really the ultra left, and it was kind of morphed into, the free love, sex and drugs, and all those different people kind of morphed, piggybacked off of the plight of Black people and them trying to achieve a level of justice and actually a future. And now the same thing happens again, where we have America's ear, we have America's heart for this moment, and we shoot for the moon. We shoot for something that's not attainable. But I'm more of an incrementalist, right? Okay, we got the ear, right? We've got. There's some policies that can be changed right now. Let's not try to shoot for the moon. Let's get something that's attainable, and as we move on, we can make progress, right? And so whatever we can get that's attainable now is exponential later. And So when I look at how they were hijacked, I said hijacked by opportunists, because at what point is everybody listening and saying, man, we missed it. Not only was that messed up what the police officers were doing, and it was kind of like shining like, something in America's face, hey, we've got to do something different. This is not right. How do you go from that to, when you see the looting, the violence, and the, Antifa and all these different ultra, groups that are on these ends of the spectrum that most Americans don't even operate.
Yeah.
Because my view is, if you look at a football field, is most Americans are at the 50-yard lines in the middle. Most Americans are on the 40-yard line of one side or the other.
Yeah.
And then it's the ones that are on the 5-yard line yelling the loudest, and we think that we give them all this power.
Wow.
And I think we have to be careful when we're making progress, to be careful who we allow to attach themselves to what we're doing.
That's good.
That don't have our same interest.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're trying to tear down a system, if you're trying to tear down the police department, most black people that I know don't want to get rid of the police.
Yeah.
Right? Most people I know we need the police officers. Right? And so why would we try to get rid of them? Look at the cities that have gotten rid of police or completely defunded them, or slash funding.
Yeah.
They're hurting right now.
Yeah.
And so how do you protect the old ladies, our grandmothers, our grandfathers that are kind of just want to go to bed at night and not worry about anything bad happening?
Yeah.
How do you protect them if you said we don't need a police officer? Who are they going to call?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's almost like a lot of these solutions are almost like Hail Mary passes, like shooting for the moon. Like we're going to use the Black Lives Matter, and that's what's going to bring the change, or all these different scenarios. And Cliff's right. I believe that the majority of Americans are in between the 40s.
Yeah.
And I can go up to any random stranger, and chances are, pretty much, I'm probably going to have more. That I agree, even as total strangers, we'll have more in agreement than what we, than what we disagree about. But we have to get out of the idea that that the solution is just one thing. That we have to get out the idea that it's just going to be, if we just get this right, and everything's going to work itself out. I use the analogy as far as when we moved down here. Up in Michigan, before we moved, I was going to the gym like crazy. I was going to the gym 6 days a week, and I was in great shape. And then COVID hit. Little Debbie moved in, and I couldn't go. Gyms were closed. I couldn't work out, and all of a sudden, all my progress was gone. And I remember when we moved down here, the gyms weren't open yet. Little Debbie moved with us, down here, and because those like strawberry cake rolls are like the best, man. Like they're the absolute best. But here's no. But here's the thing, though. As far as I stepped on the scale, and I was kind of embarrassed as far as like, man, I remember what I was and where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And then the gym opened up, and I went, and man, I worked my butt off. I was drenching sweat, and I came home and I stepped on the scale and it didn't move. And I was so frustrated, and I was like, I wanted to break the scale. And the reason why is because it didn't give me the progress that I wanted that quickly. And so what I forgot was that I had months of unhealthy eating. I have months of unhealthy habits, and I expect just one workout session to solve all the problems. And so when we have a country that has over 400 years of unhealthy treatment and unhealthy systems,
Right.
one march or one movement isn't going to fix it. That's basically, let's go to the treadmill and walk a quarter of a mile and get back home. Like, oh yeah, we just undid 400 years of social injustice. It's not going to, and I hope it's solved in my lifetime. I pray that it is, but I've come to the conclusion that, there's still so much work to do that I might not be able to see it.
Yeah.
But by God, my kids will.
Yeah.
My grandkids will. And so I think that's where I'm, for me, as far as, but the whole point though is consistency.
Yeah.
If you want to, as me, I finally worked off the Little Debbie's, but it came because I was consistent in the gym.
Yeah.
I made different choices.
Yeah.
I had a different mental approach to certain things. And so as a country, if we wanted to undo, 400 years and plus of racial injustice and everything, it's going to come with consistency.
Yeah.
Making better choices, smarter decisions, and being consistent with it.
I like it.
I think to Jeremy's end is when you're saying hope it happens.
Yeah.
I think if it doesn't happen in our lifetime, I think massive amounts of change
Yeah.
will be in our children's and grandchildren's life.
Yeah. I agree.
Because it's even estimated that over 50% of relationships and marriages will be interracial
Yeah.
within the next 10 to 15, well, I think 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
So then at what point is race
Yeah.
become like a back burner?
Yeah.
Right, and that by that time, the old relics from the 30s, 40s, and 60s that are still alive in the next 20 years, they probably won't
Yeah.
be around. So it's possible that we could have massive change within the next 20 to 25 years because of just the relational dynamics
Right.
of mixed race kids,
Yeah.
and different things like that.
Yeah. That's good. So I'm going to wrap this with a couple questions, and they're chosen intentionally, so just know that. So I'll start with you, Jeremy. So if there's someone watching today that has felt incredibly oppressed and discriminated against, and I don't even want to say just black, like Asian, Mexican, white people, whatever, like what would you say to them to encourage them?
I mean, the first thing I would definitely say is especially right now is to reach out. Especially, it's not just our physical bodies that's taking a toll, but our mental awareness right now is under attack. I mean, when you're in self-isolation and where everything is happening in the world, so we're already. Our mental capacity is not just being challenged. But so I think even now we're even more sensitive. And so some things that would have been really hurtful or painful, it's magnified now, in this. So I definitely believe that we don't do life alone. And if you don't have someone, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be tagged on this, but you can definitely reach out to me. But I would definitely say, as far as you don't have to suffer in silence, that there's still hope, that there's people. I may not know you, but I care, and I want to see the best, And so for me, I would just say I mean, I don't have the one answer, but I would definitely say that you have to get help, and know that there's other people that's gone through this.
Yeah, that's good. So Cliff, if there was someone watching this that maybe a conviction's kind of, fallen on them and they feel like they have, unknown biases, and maybe they've realized that they've, been prejudiced against someone or discriminated. If you were talking to someone who was an oppressor, like what would be your, I guess, words of encouragement for them to change?
I would say, this is going to sound silly, right? That don't condemn yourself.
Okay, good.
Right? Because condemnation leads to nothing but more oppression, right? And so those that are oppressed tend to oppress other people, right? We've all heard in psychology, hurt people do what? Hurt people, right? And so it was kind of amazing, maybe when we thought we were post-racial, in 2017, Charlottesville, and you see all these 23-year-old kids with tiki torches, right? And part of it is because they had been silenced for so long, right? And so they had to let it out, or they had to hide it. And so the first thing is, hey, stop, don't hide it, right? I'd rather deal with a person that's outwardly racist,
right,
than inwardly or covertly racist, right? That's covering their racism. And so the first part is, let's have a dialogue, right? If you feel like there's a reason why you don't like a certain ethnicity, right? And like I said, I live in Southeast Texas. There were some pretty prejudiced black people, right? And so let's just have dialogue. Let's continue. You don't have to die in this dilemma of racism, oppression, and things like that, because it's really a heart condition. If you go anywhere, right, anywhere in the world, there is oppression at every level, whether it's racial, social, socioeconomic, and things like that. So those that are, I hope I'm asking your question, those that are that have oppressed people, don't feel condemned, but then also let's have a dialogue so we can find out why. Because some things are kind of like what we've been taught for years and years and years, and it doesn't just get out overnight. And I've had friends, and they've said they had like kids. They end up having interracial relations. They said I hated black people until I had a black grandbaby. So do I hate the black grandbaby? And it said that the child actually healed
Wow.
their racism
Wow.
because you can't hate a child because it's black and it came part of you, right? And so those are kind of things that you kind of those small incremental things that happen in our lives.
Yeah.
We have to embrace them. We have to embrace those changes, those challenges, and things like that, where we're different, but we can find that common ground.
Wow. So you're saying interracial dating is going to change America? I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that.
Whatever.
Interracial dating.
I'll say this.
Marriages
I'll say this.
Create
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
If that's the first step, then who cares, right? As long as we get to the end.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree. That's cool. So my next question is for Cliff, and then if you're okay with it, Jeremy, I'd love for you to pray us out, so we can wrap the episode. But we just finished up the subject of Black Lives Matter, and you talked about there's people out there that are maybe protesting on our behalf, and in some ways kind of are doing more harm than good with their ideologies, not necessarily, maybe they think they're doing the right thing, right? What do you say to that person that's watching this and they're like, I thought I was helping, right? But, and maybe they are, but for the ones that are doing more harm than good, like, what do you tell them?
When I was speaking of that, I was more speaking of those ultra fringe, right? People that are just for taking down traditional systems of authority, anti-government forces, and people like that.
Yeah.
Those people already know what their agenda is.
Yeah.
Right? They already know that they don't care who's hurt in the process.
Right.
And so I really can't speak to, hey, listen, hey, you're doing more damage than good. I don't think they really care what they're doing. Like, say, look at a place like Portland and Seattle. Yeah. Those people already know that they're trying to topple a governmental structure. Right. Right? And I can't tell them to stand down, right? I can't tell them to stop because this right here is just their opportunity that they've been waiting for. Yeah. It's not something that's just all of a sudden they have this indignation. Okay. This is me. Yeah. Right? I don't think all of a sudden they have this indignation about a system. Yeah. It was, when do we have this opportunity? Yeah. So what I'm saying is that there are people on the ground, but there's forces that are behind them.
For sure. Right? No, and that makes sense.
And so those people right there, those fringe people, but then there's other people, right, that, maybe they get caught up in the moment of, hey, everybody else is doing it. There's kind of like, the creature of the crowd kind of things. Everybody has this threshold, right? If 1,000 people are standing there and 999 throw a brick through a window, eventually, it's not my moral compass, but eventually I'm going to pick up a brick and throw it through the wall because I've got a threshold of when I see it done over and over. And to those people, I would say now those people, you could probably say, hey, let's stand down. Yeah. Let's get a clearer head and find out what the bigger picture is. What's the end goal? What's your end goal when I'm out, maybe protesting, and I'm out trying to, just kind of find my place. Right. Because some people are just trying to find their place and find their voice. Yeah. And so what's my end game? Right. How does it look if I follow it to its natural conclusion of what am I doing? Yeah. Whether if I find it crazy that, in Atlanta, there's so many black-owned businesses, right? It's a mecca for black-owned businesses. And then you're burning it down. What's your end game? If you're really for economic progress, then why would you burn down what you're trying to build? Right? And so that's where I come down on. It's like, what's, if you're in the process of trying to find your voice, what's your end game?
Good. So. It's a good question. That's for you guys listening, not for us to answer. Cool. Well, one, thank you for co-hosting with me. This was awesome. And for you guys, thank you for being honest and open and vulnerable and fearless to approach these topics and conversations. It's not easy. As a black man, as a white man, as a Mexican woman, as a white woman, like as a human being, these are really, really hard conversations, and more often than not, we avoid them, as much as we can. And so just thank you for getting us in trouble a little bit and shaking things up a bit. And just pushing the envelope a little bit further and trying to, hopefully create change. Like, this is not a one type episode. Like, we need to have more conversations like this in our homes, in our workplaces, in our church, and everywhere, right? And so just thank you for everything you guys have poured out into these followers and listeners. And if you want to pray us out, Jeremy, I'd appreciate it.
Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for not just this opportunity, but Father, for this platform. And I thank you for those that are in this room and those that are watching. We ask you right now just to not just come in and bless, Father, but we ask you to come in and provide clarity. Father, let us see each other through your eyes, and let's be able to hear each other through your ears. We ask you right now just to bless those who do have authority, those that are in our governmental offices, that you bless them, provide clarity. Father, that they can know not just the direction, but also can lead us. And let everything that we do be a resemblance of you, the way that we talk, the way we treat each other. Let it be the way that you want us to do that. Father, I ask you right now just to bless not just this movement, but we ask you to bless this program. We ask you just to do it all in your name. Amen.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Entitled. We are ecstatic to be back, and keep listening to this episode because we have some more fun and exciting topics to follow this. So thank you guys so much.